Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. So tonight we're going to be reviewing the Electro-Harmonix Hot Wax Dual Overdrive pedal. So the Hot Wax consists of two sides. The right side is Electro-Harmonix hot tubes. So that's kind of classic amp style gain. When you push the gain up, it gets into fuzz territory. This is your cleaner, more natural, more trebly sounding overdrive side. On the right side is the Electro-Harmonix Crayon. So that is a kind of a clone of the exotic BB preamp, which is also a kind of a clone of a tube screamer, really, just with expanded EQ like a bass and a treble. Now, the four white knobs at the top, so there's a volume and a gain for the hot tubes, a volume and a gain for the Crayon, and then we've got a shared bass, treble, and interestingly a blend. So that is, fully anti-clockwise, all clean, fully clockwise, all overdrive. So you can sort of just maybe blend in a little bit of the clean like that if you want to just clean up your signal. But before I get into reviewing this pedal, right, I just want to give you a bit of background about why I arrived at this pedal. So to my right, you can see the Electro-Harmonix Soul Food, which used to be my favorite overdrive, and it sounds like this. So, very natural, very full sounding overdrive. But the problem with it is, this is at sort of max gain, right? And when you're sort of playing single lines, or trying to like pick out, notes in a chord, when you turn that up, it was getting a bit sort of muddy, so you couldn't actually hear the individual notes. And the only sort of way to remedy that really is to back the gain off slightly, right? So but then of course you've got less gain, right? So what I really wanted was a pedal with a little bit more gain and just kind of maintaining that clarity as well. I wanted to be able to have enough gain so that it fed back if I was sustaining a note, but also have that clarity on the individual notes as I pick them out in a chord, if you know what I mean. But this is not a review of the Soul Food, so let's just turn that off and let's go to the Crayon first of all. Actually, I'll give you a comparison. So this is the Soul Food at max gain. And then the Crayon. I'll just back off the volume a bit. So probably not apparent in the room, but there is more gain available on the Crayon, which is exactly what I wanted. But of course, the beauty of the Crayon on the Hot Wax is you've got the blend control, so you can dial in the clean signals so the chords sound better. So anyway, let's now move fully onto talking about the Hot Wax, shall we? So we'll start off with the Crayon side of it. So one of the sort of the first things that I discovered was, right, I'm trying to get that same very mid-forward tone from the Canyon. It's not as easy as it is on the Soul Food, right? So this is what you kind of get. Now, if you want more mids, you've kind of got to dial back the bass and the treble a bit, and then what helps is to boost the volume. So we're not at unity gain. Like, that's unity gain, so I've just go clean. So you're talking about there is unity gain, I would say. Yeah, so what you really want to do is to get the best out of the Crayon is to just have it at 12 o'clock, I think. And then just back off the bass a little bit more. I found the bass about there and the treble just backed off slightly is what works best. And then you can sort of just back off this blend control just to introduce some of the clean signal as well. So you hear that, they really ring it, the notes are ringing out nice and clear. So that's lovely, right? So that sort of solves the problem that I did have with my soul food, first of all. Now the other problem I had, this isn't on the board, was I had to use a separate pedal for my my lead boost. So I was using a Boss SD1, but I just felt it was a bit disjointed, you know, having the two overdrive pedals. Sounded a little bit compressed. It didn't really play that nice together. So that was the other reason why I decided to go for this, because a dual pedal, you know, it's designed, both pedals are designed to work together. Now, the Hot Wax, you know, it's a little bit different to a lot of dual overdrive pedals in that the order of the overdrive pedals when they're stacked is fixed, right? So it's always Crayon into hot tubes, right? Not the other way around. That can't be changed. Now, I'll just give you an idea, first of all, before I demonstrate. I'll just show you what the Hot Wax sounds like. Okay, so this is with same settings. So a lot spikier, you know, there's a lot more dynamics there, I would say. It's a lot more vintage sounding, and as you increase the gain, it gets very fuzzy and, you know. So, you know, I guess a lot of people will be asking, you know, why not have that, the hot tubes as the rhythm, and boost it with the Crayon, right? But I guess it's just the way that the stack, you know, Electro-Harmonix just thought of this, and it works better the other way around, right? And that's just what we're stuck with, which I'm quite happy with, right? So say, for example, you know, what I would do is I would have the Crayon as my sort of like rhythm. The problem with having the shared EQ in the blend is, you know, you really want to sort of like boost the treble of the Crayon, but you've got to be careful because it's shared. That's going to mean that the hot tubes becomes too trebly. So say, for example, if you've got that at 12 o'clock, that's helping the Crayon side. You're getting a bit more clarity, right? But as soon as you kick in the hot tubes, it's very trebly. So you've always got to reach a bit of a compromise. I like just backing off the treble, and that's got the advantage, of course, of increasing the mids, which is, you know, that's where you live really as a sort of a live guitar player, right? So I think it's the best compromise for this pedal is to just boost the mids by firstly increasing the volume of the Crayon above unity. 12 o'clock's good. Backing off the bass to give more clarity, backing off the treble so that the mids are pushed forward. And then when you kick in the hot tubes, it's less trebly and more usable, right? But if I'm being honest with you, I like having that sort of restriction placed on us. I like having the shared EQ, right? Because it just makes things easier and less complicated, right? Now, if I want to have, you know, less treble on the stacked tone, I can, or I can just back the gain off slightly on the hot tubes. But sometimes you might just want more gain, and if that's the case, you're going to just have to compromise with the canyon tone, right? You know, and if you really wanted to sing, you know, you would boost it past 12 o'clock. lot of gain on top, and if we increase that even more, it just gets really out of hand. And then max, it's getting very loud. Nah, you wouldn't really use that, you know, in the real world. Of course, you don't have to have the Crayon at full gain. There's quite a lot of gain available. Like I say, the blend control is so useful, because if you've got a lot of gain happening, so you want that sustain, but you just want it dial in a little bit more clean and clear it up a little bit, you don't have to back the gain off. Back it off a little bit more, introduce a bit more clean. You know, and like everything by Electro-Harmonix, this is all so intuitive, right? And you know, it's so organic sounding and natural sounding and musical sounding, right? That's what I love about their products. You know, I loved the soul food, but for me, it just ran out of legs with the Overdrive. I mean, I'm just going to go back to the soul food, right? You know, it sounds just weedy in comparison now. So, you know, much more control with this. There's not a lot more gain available. I mean, this is not really veering into distortion. You know, everything still sounds musical, I think, even when everything's maxed. And you can use this in so many situations. Like, I've just give you one application, right? So one application is you've got the Crayon for your rhythm. Then you would set up, have a bit of a volume boost, right, for the hot tube side. Not too much gain, and then that's your lead boost. With more than enough volume on top to poke through, right, a dense band mix, right? But that's not all you can do. So, for example, you could just, well, what you could do, still have a stacked tone, right? But just kick it in. Sorry, I'll just demonstrate that again. So you've got, there's your rhythm tone. But seeing you just want more gain, you don't want more volume. It's like just still rhythm, but it's a different, more distorted rhythm part. You could just go. So you could do that, or I mean, you could just have the hot tubes as, you know, your rhythm. The only disadvantage, though, that I said before is you can't, this is the pedal that comes last in the chain, so you can't get any more volume. Basically, this volume is the master volume of this pedal, right? If both pedals are on. So it doesn't matter how much you boost the volume of that. When you kick that in, you just get more gain, not more volume. So it's a restriction that's placed on you, but like I said earlier, I think that restriction's been put into place because I think, anyway, drop us a comment, I think Electro-Harmonix have tested the order of this and just decided that it doesn't work the other way around. I think that's because the Crayon is kind of the main tone shaper, right, which is your bass tone, and this is just adding that extra bit of spice on top. If it's the other way around, it doesn't play as nice. I think that's why they've gone for that, and it does play so nice. Yes, let's just get it back to that setting there. And the other thing, you know, worth mentioning, of course, is the blend control doesn't actually exist on the standalone version. of the Crayon. So, you know, this pedal is just giving you that extra feature as well, which is such a useful feature. You know, you've set up everything the way you like it, right? Say, for example, we're here. You're happy with everything. You just would like it a bit more clarity. There's you add a bit more clarity dial. It just works perfectly. Intuitive, like I said. So the price of this pedal as well is surprising. You know, I mean, you can get these for about, I think they're 110, 120 pounds new. You know, which this is a fantastic sounding overdrive, dual overdrive pedal. You would be paying a lot of money to get anything better than this. You know, and you know, consider the manufacturer, Electro-Harmonix, the build quality. It's all metal, right? The form factor. It's tight. You know, it's tiny. Really, you can hit both switches at the same time with one foot if you like. Really, it looks great. There's no issues with the pedal. You know, there's no scratchy pots. I mean, I bought this second hand. Really, this is a 10-year-old pedal, right? And it's still pretty much perfect condition. There's not a scratch on it, really. The switches work perfectly. You know, they're very reassuring under the foot. You know, the graphics design, everything's just so clear. There's your red side, there's your green side, right? And there's your controls, and the color coded. So like the UI keeps saying the UI on this pedal is brilliant, right? I love Electro-Harmonix products. I loved the Soul Food, but it's just time to say goodbye to that. I think we've just moved on slightly. Can I think of any other negative points of this pedal? I'm struggling. I think it's the perfect overdrive pedal for me, and I've been through a few. You know, I've been on a journey. I've been Boss DS1 was a craft. Blues Driver clones. Check out the videos on the channel. You know, the Soul Food, which is a, you know, Consentua clone. I've been through the lot, and it's just ticking the boxes. You know, and I haven't even mentioned, you know, those players that might want to lean on the cleaner side of things, right? So I think for that, you know, if we've got like a clean tone. You know, if you want to just dial in a bit of hot tubes, it's so transparent, right? You know, all the way to this. I mean, a lot of people have said that, you know, the Electro-Harmonix Hot Tubes is one of the closest pedals to like a real valve amp, you know, and you know, it's hard to argue with that, really, isn't it? That's me backing off the volume control on the guitar. And bring it back in. So responsive. And then if you sort of, you know, just to give you an idea of the range, right, we'll just try that with the hot tubes. Sorry, we'll try that with the Crayon. So yeah, I mean, this is when the EQ comes into it. If you want to use these individually, you're going to be messing about a lot more with EQ, getting that treble content in there. And just bringing in the gain. Obviously, you know that the Crayons I think for me, is colouring the sound a lot more. It's colouring the tone. It's got more of that tube screamer vibe to it. But it still cleans up. as we're getting the max gain, and then we'll just maximum blend. And then I kind of want to start boosting the mids at that point. Backing off the bass. You see, I think that's a good place for me, for the Crayon. What the problem is when you kick in the hot tube, that's a bit too spiky. So I do, yeah, there is a bit of a compromise when he's stacking for my, you know, for the applications that I would use it for. But like I say, some players wouldn't stack them. They would just use the two brilliant classic overdrives separately, you know, and just come to a bit of a compromise on the EQ, but you know, not too worried about stacking them. And yeah, I am sort of waffling a bit now, so it must be getting towards the end of the video. But you know, these are such a well thought out pedal. You know, two classic overdrives, two very different overdrives, right? Remember, classic sounding, very dynamic, very amp-like, more treble content, more cut, right? Less mids, sort of, this is more natural. And then this side, kind of the smoother, chunkier, more tube screamery type drive, less, you know, less ragged, right? This is ragged, but you know, blend it together. What, you know, you putting the raggedness into that works brilliantly. But also, you know, you've got this unruly lead tone, right? And then you've got it, you know, without the mids, and then you've got it boosted with the mids of the Crayon / BB preamp / tube screamer, whatever you want to call it. So is this the end of the road for me with overdrive pedals? I mean, for now at least, it definitely is. You know, stuff's going to go on eBay now. Drastically cut down my pedal board. All I've got now is, you can probably see it to the left there, that's my Hot Tone Ampero Mini. That's dealing with all of the effects, the tuner, and any, you know, cabinet emulation I might need as a backup. And this thing, tiny little thing, is dealing with all my overdrives in one unit with one power supply, one in, one out. It's amazing. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for liking, subscribing, all that stuff. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.